In this tutorial we're going to take a look at how to set page breaks. And page breaks are mainly used for for adjusting how our spreadsheet is going to appear when we print it. So right now the first thing you want to keep in mind when you're adjusting page breaks is what orientation your spreadsheet is in. And what I mean by that is there's actually two orientations. So to take a look at orientations, we're going to go to our page layout tab, and it's just to the right of the home tab. So when you click on page layout, you'll notice you have an option in the page setup grouping, which is here, that's called orientation. So if I click this drop down, we can see that there's actually two types of orientation, and that is portrait and landscape. And what the difference between these two is portrait, whenever your spreadsheet is in portrait orientation, that means if you were to print it, the paper, the direction that the information will print on, it's going to be 11 inches tall by 8.5 inches wide. If we change this to landscape, that means that when we print our spreadsheet, that it will print 11 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. And that can be beneficial if you're trying to have a lot of information show up on one page without breaking apart across multiple pages. So this is the case for our current spreadsheet that we're working with. So we're going to put this in landscape view. So to do that, we click on orientation and just click on landscape. So once we're sure of the view of the orientation that we want the spreadsheet to be in and how it will print, we would then click on the View tab. Once we're on the View tab, we have some options on the left hand side in the grouping called Workbook Views. And right now we're viewing the spreadsheet in its normal view. We would like to choose Page Break Preview. So I'm going to go ahead and click Page Break Preview. Now when I do, Excel is actually going to show me where my current page breaks are. So as you can see, we have a blue dotted line running down the screen, running down the spreadsheet, and that blue dotted line is actually representing our current page break. And what that means is right now everything to the left of the blue dotted line will print on page 1, and everything to the right of the blue dotted line will print on page 2. So if we wanted all of our information to print together on one page, this current page break would not allow that. So in order to make that happen, we would need to adjust this page break. So we can adjust the page break by using our mouse to hover over the blue dotted line. And when I do that, notice that my mouse pointer changes. So it's going to change to this form of this double, it's a black double arrow. So I'm hovering over the blue dotted line, and once my mouse pointer has changed shape and it's in the form of this double arrow, I'm going to left click my mouse button and I'm going to drag this to the right. And when I do, notice now that all of the information will now appear on page 1. So now that we've adjusted our page break, we would be able to print this with all of the information appearing on one page. Now there is also another location that you can adjust your page orientation, and if we click on our File tab, which is the green tab in the left hand corner, and we are now in the Backstage view, and we choose Print, notice here that there is another area where we can change our page orientation. So we can change it from portrait to landscape here as well. One thing to keep in mind is that when you change it from portrait to landscape in this area, it also changes that on your main spreadsheet as well. So whatever you do here is going to transition into the spreadsheet. So as you can see at this point, we have adjusted our page break. So all of our information is now going to appear on one page. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can see that it's showing page 1 of 1. Now this is a good place to go and a good indicator if you've ever tried to print something from Excel and you got an extra page that was a blank page. This would be your first indication that that was going to happen. If this said like 1 of 2 and you know that all of your information is actually contained on the first page, and that this would let you know that, hey, there's another page that's going to be printed out, and that would be that blank page. And if that's happening, there is a future tutorial that's going to review the topic of how to adjust Excel and how to make changes so that you don't get a blank page that's printing out and how to prevent that from happening. So just in summary, in order to change our page breaks or to set page breaks, the first thing we would want to do is go to our page layout tab and choose the orientation, whether that be portrait or landscape. And then we would go to our view tab, click on the page break preview button, and then this is the screen we'll get, and we can drag that dotted line to wherever we want that to be. Now, once we're all finished, our spreadsheet is still in this view. No matter which tab we click on, the spreadsheet is still in this view. So to change this back to the normal view, we would just click on the view tab and just click normal again, and that would display our spreadsheet back in normal view. And this black dotted line that's now part of our spreadsheet is just representing where our current page break is. So when we change page breaks, this will display where it's at currently. Now the current page break that we set up, we were in landscape orientation. So let's see what happens if we go to print by clicking on our file tab and going down to print. If we were to change the page orientation from the print area and click on portrait, notice that now we have page 1 of 2. So at first glance it may appear that something didn't work right with the page break, but that's actually not the case. What is actually happening is we set a page break while our page was in landscape orientation. So if we wanted to change that to portrait orientation, we would need to change the page or set a page break while it was in portrait orientation. So to do that, we would go back to our page layout, select the portrait orientation, which it was already portrait because we did set that on the file tab, and then we would go to the view tab, click page break preview, and notice we have the blue dotted line. So if we were to adjust this and pull this over, it would set a page break so that this would print in portrait view with everything printing on one page on paper that was 11 inches tall by 8.5 inches wide. Now one thing to take note of is when you have a spreadsheet, it's easy to go to set a page break on landscape when we have a lot of information that we want to fit across a page and then print it that way. But if you were to change it back at a later time, if you were to change that to portrait, which is the view that we're in right now, and set your page break while this is in portrait, and then you go to the file tab and click print, notice all the information is appearing on one page in the view of portrait. But if I were to change this orientation back to landscape, notice that the font size is much smaller. So that is one thing to keep in mind of, and that's why we need to be aware of our page orientation, because if we go from landscape to portrait and we change our page breaks, if we have a lot of information that we're kind of scrunching on a page that's portrait, then it will cause our font to be much smaller when we print that. So it's always a good idea, if you have a lot of information, to start out with landscape and then set your page breaks while you're in landscape, and then print your spreadsheet from that orientation rather than from portrait. So at this point we're going to go ahead and change our view back to normal, and I would like to show you one other thing. Speaking of these views, you have another button that sits right between normal and page break preview that's called page layout. And this just shows you a different version, a different layout of your page. If you had multiple pages, it would show you each page and the information that's going to be contained on each page. I've had a lot of questions in the course of teaching these classes in a classroom I have my spreadsheet, it's in this strange, it looks strange, it's in this strange view, and I don't know how to get it back to just normal. And if you ever find yourself in that situation, whether you are in page break preview or page layout, the only thing you would need to do is go to your view tab and just click normal, and it will change your spreadsheet back to the normal visual, so it's going to look normal for you again. So please join me for future tutorials. Thank you.